welcome to AP English, the eSchool version. It is good to have you back in class, although I wish it could be in person. Today we're going to be going over a lesson, but before we do that, I just want to go over a couple quick updates with you. While I do not have all the information, the AP exam is still going to happen. It is taken at home on May 20th at 12 noon. Instead of it being a 3-hour-long test with 3 different essays, multiple choice, this test is only 45 minutes and you will only write one rhetorical analysis essay. Colleges, most colleges have agreed to honor this exam. And again, you're only writing that one rhetorical analysis essay, which I'm assuming is going to be typed. And it is open note, so you can use any of the resources that were handed out to you earlier in the trimesters. Most of you will also write a rhetorical analysis essay on the SAT. We still don't have the dates for the SAT and which date you might be taking it, but preparing now for that rhetorical analysis essay and those rhetorical analysis questions is a great idea. So today's module focuses solely on understanding the rhetorical situation within a text. If you have not already done so, I recommend going to complete the warm-up, so pausing the video and going to answer this warm-up question. We're going to begin each module with a warm-up question, and so it's important that you take time to complete that, and then you can watch this introductory video. If you've already completed it, great, continue with the video. And this warm-up question has us thinking about a time when a parent, guardian, or someone older than us of elevated status offered us advice. Why did they offer you this advice? What was that advice? How was the advice delivered? So what tone or attitude was used? And how did the person convey this advice? And so as you were writing, you probably were thinking, well, about like what type of advice it was and how it was conveyed. Was it very direct, or was it more kind and supporting? Was it firm and strict, or did it highlight the positives? Was it forceful, and so that person's giving you advice and telling you what to do, or was it pretty critical? And so it's important to know that when someone is giving you advice, they are acting as the writer or the speaker here, and they are using a specific tone to convince you of something. And so knowing your audience, who that person is, and how they tend to receive advice is super important. Today we're going to be identifying the rhetorical situation in a pre-20th century text. So you will need 2 items on your computer open. You'll need the letter from Abigail Adams to her son, and you will need today's classwork if that is not already open. We have seen this before. We have covered who is the writer, what is their message, who are they appealing to, who is their audience. Why is the writer writing about what is being written? But today we're going to take it a step further. We want to go a little bit more in depth with the rhetorical situation and why it really matters. When we think of the writer, this is often kind of the easiest one because it's the person that is writing the piece. We often are given their name, but we also need to think about what does the example suggest about the writer's beliefs or needs. This is not always explicit. So we really need to be thinking about what is revealed about the writer within the text. For audience, what does this example suggest about the audience's values, beliefs, or needs, about the writer's perception of those values? Does the writer truly understand their audience? Do they understand what the audience value, or are they making assumptions? And why might the writing be so persuasive for this specific audience, but maybe not another? Exigence is what does this example illuminate about why the text was written. So why is the writer putting pen to paper and writing this speech right now? Or why is the writer writing this letter? Context is what does this example illuminate about the time in which the text was written. So is this pre-Civil War? Is this right after the Revolutionary War? Why does that time period matter? What can it tell us about like the current events or society at the time? Purpose is how does this example relate to the writer's purpose? How does it contribute to the writer's purpose? So why, again, is the writer writing this, but how do these specific examples kind of cater to that and build a larger idea? Message, how does the example relate to the writer's message? What does this illuminate about the subject? So we are going to take some time to delve into this piece by Abigail Adams, and we're going to actually start with the prompt. So if you could go ahead and pull that up, and everybody should be looking at the prompt. When we are reading the prompt, we can actually learn quite a bit about the rhetorical situation. And again, just a reminder, the rhetorical situation involves the writer, the audience, the exigence, the context, the purpose, and the message. And so I'm going to read this prompt to you, and then we're going to kind of pick out where we see the writer, the audience, the exigence, the context, the purpose, and the message. In the following letter, Abigail Adams writes to her son, John Quincy Adams. So we already know that our writer here is Abigail Adams. So I'm going to just draw a little line there. And she's writing to her son, John Quincy Adams. So he is our audience, who is traveling abroad with his father. And so this part, who is traveling abroad with his father, that is our exigence. That's why she's writing to him, and it's because he's abroad. She wouldn't have to write that letter if he were still like sitting at home. She could probably just speak to him. So he who is traveling abroad with his father, John Adams, a United States diplomat, and later the country's second president. This is context. It's not necessarily a lot of context. It doesn't give us a lot about what's going on at the time, but it's still some context that we have. Write an essay that analyzes the rhetorical choices Adams makes to convey her argument about the value of experience. And right here we have our message. So she's trying to convey something about the value of experience, and her overall purpose is to convey her argument. So she's trying to persuade her son that the value of experience is meaningful. Now, if we, you'll notice if we needed to, we already have a basic understanding of the rhetorical situation. And so if we needed to write that in 1 to 2 sentences, we could. And let's take a look at that. I have it written out here. Abigail Adams, a mother, wants her son, John Quincy Adams, who is on a journey abroad, to understand her views on the value of experience. She crafts a letter to her son in order to convey this position and convince him to believe it as well. And so you'll notice that we have our writer kind of outlined here. We have our audience, her son. This is our exigence. He's on a journey abroad, and that's why she's writing him. And she wants him to understand her views on the value of experience. So we have our purpose and our message, because her message is this value of experience, and I'm assuming she's going to expand upon that in her letter. So we'll learn a little bit more about her message as well. We don't have the context, not just because it doesn't fit, but this is a basic understanding of the rhetorical situation. It is good. It is vague, but it is good, but it could be better. So throughout today's lesson, we're going to be reading the letter and trying to understand at more depth what is the rhetorical situation. And so we're going to be adding to this at the end of our mastery check. We might revise it completely. We might add more details to go more in depth and to like earn that sophistication point. But right now, we're going to focus on reading the letter and better understanding the rhetorical situation within the letter. Now that we have unpacked the prompt and discerned parts of the rhetorical situation from the prompt, I'm going to ask that you pause the video and you take time to read the letter. At this point in the year, you are familiar with the rhetorical analysis prompt, and we do need to make sure that number 1, we're pacing ourselves as we're reading this, and number 2, that we are annotating or capturing our ideas as we're reading this. Now this looks a little different when we are not in a classroom with a hard copy, and so what I recommend is getting a scrap sheet of paper if you have it and just jotting down where do we see the rhetorical situation play out in this reading. So for example, where do we learn more about the writer or about the audience or her perception of the audience? Where do we see the exigence, why it's being written, and her purpose and her message. And so I recommend reading it, taking 6 minutes to read and capture some ideas on paper. And then once you have finished, come back to this video to watch me annotate the opening of the letter. Okay, if you were here, you have finished reading the letter, and you may be thinking, okay, I read that. I have no idea what I just read. And so my advice is when you're reading anything that's difficult or challenging, that you take time to just chunk the text and pick out a few key sections of the text that you're going to focus on. So for example, you might pick out the opening, a middle section, and an ending section. And you're just going to focus on reading and understanding those 3 sections of text and using those in your rhetorical analysis essay. For today, we are going to start by reading and annotating the opening. The opening of the text is always important. It's how the author first kind of opens her piece, and so it often shows us a lot about who she is or why she's writing it. So today we're going to start. I'm going to read this to you, and you'll notice that you have a place on your handout to copy down some of the notes that we take together, and that will be used as a model when you complete the independent practice. My dear son, I hope you've had no occasion, either from enemies or the dangers of the sea, to repent. And repent in this sense means like to regret. So to repent your second voyage to France. If I had thought your reluctance arose from proper deliberation, or that you were capable of judging what was most for your own benefit, this is kind of a backhanded compliment here. She's like, if I thought you knew what was best for you, I should have not urged you to accompany your father and brother when you appeared so averse to the voyage. Right here we have some interesting details that are pointed out that are indicated to us about the audience. And I've underlined 3 words that stand out to me. I hope you have had no occasion either from your enemies or dangerous sea to repent your second voyage, your reluctance, if you had not appeared so averse to the voyage. And so we're noticing that our audience, and again, we know who that is her son, he definitely was hesitant to travel with his father, or to go on this voyage. So hesitant, we're going to get that note down. To travel abroad. And maybe it wasn't just to travel abroad, maybe it was just to travel in general. But we note that through these 3 details that she indicates. We also note a little bit about the writer here, where she says, I should have not urged you to accompany your father, or when she says that, or that you were capable of judging what was most for your own benefit. So notice she indicates that she was one of those people that really encouraged him to go. I should have not urged you to accompany. Like if he had known what was best for him, she wouldn't have had to put this encouragement forward. And so we notice that she's the one encouraging him to go. And I'm going to finish, go on the trip. And then last, we understand a little bit more about, well, actually, we also see, let me go back here. For the writer encouraging him to go on the trip, we also see that in the second paragraph. You, however, readily submitted to my advice. So we learned something about both the author and the audience here. Number 1, he trusts his mother because he submitted to her advice. And number 2, she's the one still encouraging him to go. And I hope will never have occasion yourself nor give me reason to lament it. I hope you will not regret this. Your knowledge of the language must give you greater advantages now than you could possibly have reaped whilst ignorant of it. And as you increase in years, you will find your understanding opening and daily improving. And so here she's just kind of saying that like your knowledge of the language and your understanding of the advantages of this trip, you'll start to see those shortly. We also have a bit of the exigence surfacing here. And the reason why she's writing this, which is what our exigence is because we see that he was reluctant. And so she's writing this because he was reluctant. Because he was reluctant to go on the trip. Okay, so we have captured a little bit more. We have a little bit more understanding of the audience. We know that the son is hesitant to travel. We don't quite know why, but we definitely know he was reluctant. The writer, we know that she has been like kind of his big encouragement, and she thought it was good for him. And the exigence, she is writing this letter because of his reluctance. So she's not just writing this to be like, here's what I did today on the colony. She's writing this to say, like, experience this, know that this is a good thing. All right, for the rest of the time, you are going to be reading the other two sections of text. And as you're reading those, you're doing something similar. You're kind of reading it out loud to yourself, and then you're identifying parts of the rhetorical situation that are uncovered in that bit of text. Once you get to the mastery check, you should have a deeper understanding of the rhetorical situation in the letter. And so what you'll want to do is, yes, we have that basic structure of the rhetorical situation. You're going to want to revise it, make it stronger, more in depth. You might want to add something. So like, yes, she's a mother. What else do we know about her as a mother? Or you might want to take away, you might want to completely rewrite it. It's up to you. If you have questions, of course, I'm always available in the chat function, and I am in Microsoft Teams, so I'm available if you have questions.